We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Supermac and Gibbo join me as always on a Thursday. Good evening, lads. How are you?
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Not bad, mate. Not bad, John.
Good to see you, lads. Good to see you. And yes, plenty to talk about as always for the next hour. And if you want to get a question into the lads, then stick them in the chat and we will endeavour to get to them. Newcastle and Malcolm out of the Carabao Cup in the quarter-final stage, missing out on a derby in the semis as well. Some might see it as a derby, others don't, but I always do. Newcastle Middlesbrough would have been the semi-final, but pointless thinking of that. We are out, and we had it in our hands, Malcolm. 1-0 up, 4 minutes to go, and unfortunately, we conceded an equaliser and then lost on penalties. And I've got to be honest, Malcolm, that really hurt me. It took me a while to get over it. I'm okay now, but it was a tough one to take because the path to Wembley hadn't been easy. But watching Newcastle, despite the injuries that they had against Chelsea, we had more than enough to beat them the other night. We didn't, and I think that's why I'm disappointed. And then seeing that semi-final draw, we could have been at Wembley again.
Yes. It would be very easy to have a go at Trippier for the mistake that he made that led to the equalising goal, but I'm not going to because he's a damn good pro. He's a very good player. Okay, so he's made a mistake, which is a rare thing for him. What does concern me most of all, though, is how many late goals we're letting in. And we are losing a lot of points. We're getting knocked out of 2 cup competitions through late goals. And what I'm not seeing is, and it used to just be a general thing at all the clubs that I've played with. You get to the last 10 minutes or so, and if you're 1-0 up, if you're 2-0 up, you don't go herring forward in numbers. What you do is you look to get the ball into the opposing half and get it into the corners and hold on to it. But we're just charging forward willy-nilly. And we're losing a lot of points by it. And late goals have knocked us out of the 2 cup competitions that we've been in so far. And it all started against Liverpool at the beginning of the season nearly, where they scored in the 81st minute. And if we hadn't learnt our lesson, they scored then in the 90 plus 3rd minute. You know, come on. And then it goes all the way through. West Ham, Borussia Dortmund, PSG, Everton, they got 3 in the last 11 minutes, for heaven's sake. Tottenham, AC Milan, and then Chelsea. And that's 11 goals let in 26 games, and That's 11 late goals when we've only let in a total of 22 goals. Sorry, where are we? 21 goals. We've let in a total of 21 goals, and we've got 11 scored in the last 10 minutes or so. And so it's glaring. It is absolutely glaring. And I think we can go back to we can go back to the Liverpool game, for heaven's sake, and that was absolutely appalling in the way that we gave the last 10 minutes away, gave the game away in the last 10 minutes against them. And so, and I don't see things changing. We're not learning from our mistakes. That's a major problem. If something is wrong, put it right. But we're not doing that.
Your thoughts?
Well, huge disappointment. Mainly because we give, like Malcolm, I'm not going to have a go at Trippier. I think he's got so much goodwill in the bank, even though he's made quite a few mistakes recently. What he's done for this club since he come has been absolutely wonderful, and it would be dreadful to point the finger. He got caught late on in a split second. He didn't know whether to flick the ball back on towards it going out on the far side or cushion a header to the keeper, and he ended up doing neither. He got caught in no man's land, not certain what to do. The ball dropped off his head, and that was it. And of course his head's going to be all over the place by the time penalties come, having made that particular mistake. But I've got nothing but sympathy for him. I am decimated to have gone out of 2 cup competitions when we had effectively won both, because we were ahead at half time against both AC Milan and Chelsea, and going into the last minutes, as Matt said, we were in the Europa League, at least in Europe, and we were in the semi-final of the League Cup, and therefore it is dreadfully hard to take. And ironically, what we're facing, Steve, in the rest of the season is just getting what we've just given up. Our aim in the rest of the season has got to be qualifying for the Champions League and getting to a quarter-final of a domestic cup, the FA Cup this time, but making it count by going on and winning the thing. So, in fact, what we had just a fortnight ago, and we lost inside 1 week, is what we're trying desperately to get back in the rest of this season. And you think, what are the reasons why it has gone suddenly wrong? Well, the most obvious one is the fact that we have an injury list which has remained in double figures for weeks now, and that is an incredible burden to carry. So is it that, or is it that we've blown it, that we've had matches won and then individual mistakes or lack of game management, because our game management hasn't been good at all, which is another way of what Malcolm's been talking about. Or have we blown it? Now, I think it's both. We have been incredibly unlucky, and we have blown it. We've done both those things. And I think, injuries are getting more and more. Why? Because, we're having to play with the same players all the time, and fatigue comes in, and I think you're more susceptible to injuries when suffering from fatigue, legs, etc., that sort of fatigue. And, you look at our recent record, and that shows through. We haven't been able to change the team much, if at all, and we've lost 6 of our last 10 games in all competitions. That's
won 7 out of 7 at home. It seems to be a problem away, John.
Well, yes, without a doubt.
Yeah. We've only conceded 4 goals at home, and
Crazy.
conceded 17 away from home.
That's crazy.
I mean, it is the away form.
That's in the Premier League.
Yeah, I was going to say that, in fact, you know, you can look at it another way because you can twist figures to be whatever you want them to be. I mean, our home record in the Premier League is nothing sort of sensational. We've won every match bar one. But you can look at it the other way and say we played 3 matches at home in the Champions League and lost 2 of them. And the one we lost in the league was to Liverpool, who are an elite team.
Yeah. 2 goals in the last 10 minutes as well, John.
Yeah. But what I mean is we've lost 2 at home in the Champions League, plus a 1 to Liverpool.
Sure.
Away from home is what worries me because we had a terrific record away from home last season in the Premier League, and now it is exactly the opposite outside of what has become an oasis, which is the Sheffield United game.
And what we haven't mentioned, John, are the shocking performances away from home. Everton, Bournemouth.
Yes, of course.
Weren't in the game.
And the worry is that we're playing that sort of side again on Saturday when we're away to Luton.
And they're in the bottom half of the table, for heaven's sake, and they're murdering us.
We've got to get it right. But having said that, I want to keep a sense of proportion because the biggest thing that Newcastle did, and this is a very silly thing to say, but bear with me for a moment, is they made a rod for their own back by finishing 4th. When you look at the way Manchester City, when they were taken over, I think they finished mid-table. The first season they were taken over with a very similar situation in Newcastle. Arabs coming in with a lot of money, taking over a club, and we're going to make it a super club. But they finished mid-table the first season, 5th the second season, and slowly built on that and become the Manchester City we know today. We went straight from a relegation side to 4th top. So all of a sudden, we almost put expectation going through the roof. And then, of course, it all goes pear-shaped. But you can look at it the other way and say, we're 7th in the league. We made a good fist of it in the Champions League. We were never the 4th, the bottom side in our group. I mean, but for being robbed by the referee in VAR in Paris Saint-Germain, we would have gone through. And we reached the quarter-final of the League Cup, having beaten Manchester City, the European champions, and Manchester United, the holders. So it's not all doom and gloom, but where we worry, we know that long-term, the Newcastle United future is secure and is inevitable. What is not so obvious is the immediate future of us, because we've lost 6 of the last 10. We've got a horrendous injury list. Every time we play, somebody else, now it's Anthony Gordon. Somebody else is injured to add to the list. And therefore, the immediate future is what's worrying. But, the rest of the season, you can look at it 2 ways. You can say things are slipping away from us because of our atrocious luck with injuries, and the injuries are still mounting up. And therefore, it can be tough. Or you can look at it the other way and say, we're going back in the second half of the season to what we had last season, which is a very light workload, because we're only in the FA Cup and the Premier League. So we've got the same sort of workload that got us to 4th top last season, and we've got the January window about to open where we can do something about the injuries and do something about recruitment. So we should have a better second half of the season results-wise than we've had in the first half of the season. You can look at it that way. And in other words, is the Geordie pint pot half full or half empty? You can make a case out for either. And we're about to find out, aren't we? Because, results will determine everything. Certainly, we've got to take 6 points out the next 2 games, because they're against Luton and against Nottingham Forest, which are below average sides. Because after that, we've got Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal. and a little matter of the FA Cup at Sunderland as well. So there's a big programme coming, which means that anything less than 6 points against Luton and Forest will be like chucking points away like confetti in the wind, sort of thing. They've got to get those 6 points because of the next 3 games or so. The next 3 games are against top 4 clubs in Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal.
Yeah.
And an FA Cup tie in there. So we've got to get the 6 points out of this. Will we? Well,
Aston Villa. Yeah, Aston Villa and Arsenal. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm absolutely correct. Aston Villa, not Arsenal. My apologies. But as I say, 3 top 4 sides.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be pivotal to where we finish this season, John. That month, and it's coming at the worst possible time for us, isn't it? Really?
It is, without a shadow of doubt. And I think 2 of those games, Aston Villa and Liverpool, 2 of the big 3 games are away from home. So with the current away form that we have, so it is a tough old period, and of course the FA Cup's away from home, albeit against the Championship side. But it's going to be a tough old time, but we have a chance to steady the board by getting 6 points out of 6 away to Luton and home to Forest. But it is very, very hard, because I do think when you watch us, we are running on empty a lot of the time, aren't we? Especially away from home.
Yeah, but is there a fitness problem, John? Because I've highlighted how many goals have been scored in the last 10 minutes. Is it? I personally feel that the way we play in the last 10 minutes, we don't change the game. We don't say, okay, let's just get the shutters up. We're 1-0 up. Let's keep it at that. That we're flooding forward. But is it also perhaps fair to say that in those last 10 minutes that the legs aren't as strong as they should be?
Well, I mean, again, if you haven't been able to change your side, and we've been playing 3 games a week, weekend, midweek, weekend, that's going to stop now once we get the festive season out the way, because we're only going to be playing in the league and the FA Cup. But if you played the same players virtually every game, the same outfield players virtually every game, and for 3 games a week, then by the end of the game comes, you would suspect that tiredness mentally as well as physically will play a major part. I don't know that you can honestly say. I would be surprised that they're being undertrained. You could have said that with Steve Bruce, but I don't think you can say with Eddie Howe that they're not physically fit enough, i.e. their training's not making them fit.
Sure. I'll tell you what I'm not seeing, John. I am not seeing players, and we've got experienced players. We've got Trippier, who can act as captain. We've got Lascelles, who is the current captain with him in the side. And what they're not doing is they're not changing the game. You're not seeing them, as we get to, say, the last 15 minutes, and we're 1-0 up, away from home, let's put the barriers up. And they're not starting to dictate to other players as to what to do. And everybody's just getting on the ball, flooding forward, and we're getting caught time and again. And I'm getting really fed up with it. I have to say that we keep getting caught. For heaven's sake, when the number of goals that we've actually conceded in the last 10 minutes is horrendous, and we're not doing anything about it. It's not registering with the players, and it doesn't seem to be registering with the manager or the coaches to say, right, last 10 minutes, and okay, and I can understand that the players because of the workload that they've had, there aren't the numerous subs like other clubs have to bring on and to bring fresh legs on, and so you have to come up with a plan to overcome all of that. And when you're coming up to 80 minutes in a game, you're 1-0 up, away from home, put the shutters up, for heaven's sake. And no, we don't. We go flooding forward, and we're inviting them to just come and attack us with space. And I just, is there a plan B? Because
I also think
plan A works attacking wise, but sometimes you need plan B and defend.
Sometimes it's as simple, is just keeping your shape. I mean, you don't have to be ultra defensive, like 10 people behind the ball.
No, I'm not saying that, John.
No, I know you're not, but I'm just saying for fans, because the first thing fans say the minute you say shut up shop, they think, I don't want to be defensive because we've been defensive for 15 years under Ashley. I want to be attacking. But it isn't a matter of being defensive. If you keep your shape and your centre-half plays as a centre-half in the last quarter of an hour rather than marauding forward, if your midfielders stay disciplined and stay in position instead of, then you can see the game out and you can counter-attack in the way that AC Milan did against us late in the game, of course, where they kept the shape and kept the patience and then done us when we left spaces that could be exploited. But we've got to start finding ways, and which is the point you're making, Malcolm, we've got to start finding ways of getting results. Yeah, because we're not getting results at the moment. Yes, we are at home, like the Fulham game, and they 10 men. So yes, that helped enormously. But we've got to find a way of getting results, because we can't let the season run away from us, and it is in danger of running away from us.
Well, yes, it is, and the more that we concede in late on in a game, the more the season runs away with you, because when that goal goes in, you've got very little time to do anything about it. And when you think that of all of the goals that have been scored this season so far, 11 goals have come against us in the last 10 minutes. Now, there's no other set of 10 minutes in the game that have had more goals scored against us through this season so far than the last 10 minutes. We're giving them away. We are absolutely just giving them away, and this should be ringing alarm bells in the dressing room and the manager's office. Alarm bells, loud and clear. Right, we've got to do something about this, and the warnings have been there for some while now. And I still don't see anything being done about it. And, well, and against Chelsea on Tuesday night, for heaven's sake, I thought we were just opening doors for them in those last few minutes. Opening doors, saying, "Oh, go on, after you." For heaven's sake, close it all up, put the shutters up, and defend with your lives. And no mistakes, and if it's coming awkwardly at you, just get your head to it or your boot to it and get it as far away from the goal as possible. And don't get and when you're thinking like that, you don't get caught in two minds, John, like Trippier did. He was trying to, I don't know, be a bit clever. Hey, come on, the referee's not far from blowing the final whistle, for heaven's sake. Don't be pretty, don't be clever, just be effective.
It was one of those fatal ones, wasn't it? I mean, we've all, most of us have played football in some way, shape or form, and you're always told, especially in that situation, don't let the ball bounce. And that was, Mudryk was in on him like a flash, and that was it. The rest is history. And penalties, it's a lottery,
because he got caught. The ball's just dropped off him, and he was on his heels, and so it's difficult to get your balance going forward rather than backwards. And so he got caught. But the point I'm making is that should never even come as a chance at all. In the last few minutes, just get it away. With his head, just bang it up in the air.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You're not being You're not being clever. You're not being pretty. At a time like that, you're being effective.
You know what though? In perspective, right? Forget about it being the Carabao Cup quarter final, right? Let's look at it from a footballing point of view with the players we've got available. In the last few weeks, we've beaten Chelsea at home 4-1. We've beaten Manchester United at home 1-0. We've been to PSG and drawn ones each, and we've gone to Chelsea, albeit in the Carabao Cup, but in normal time we've drawn 1-1. With the injuries we've got, Eddie Howe, you know what? Fair play to you, mate. You've done your best. It hasn't been good enough to get us through to the semi-finals, but by lad, you and the players, you have pulled up trees. And I want to finish the first half, Malcolm, just on a positive by saying, well done, Kieran Trippier. Fans Footballer of the Year, 10,000 votes cast, a nationwide competition. The Reach Fans Footballer of the Year from people from all different clubs was Kieran Trippier. And in a time when he probably needs an arm around his shoulder and maybe a little bit of respect from the fans, well done to him. And I think that was probably a timely boost for him, Malcolm. At a time when he'll be kicking
Steve,
himself. Nobody will be hurting more than him.
When did he know about this?
What was that? Sorry, he found out.
When did he get to find out?
After the game. It wasn't announced till after the game.
Right, after the Chelsea game.
It was a day later.
Okay.
I mean, he'll still be smarting. We're all smarting from going out to the quarterfinals. But looking back on his 2-year career, Malcolm, I've got to be honest. As my time as a football Newcastle United fan, I think he's every bit as important for me in the time that we signed him as maybe signing Kevin Keegan was signing Kevin Keegan and potentially.
Steve, I'm not going to disagree because I think that Trippier, not only has he come in and shown through his own ability the way the game should and could be played, but he works hard to improve all of those around him, and all the time he's talking to other players to help them and improve their game. And I think that he's such a valuable asset as a player or as a coach, And if in a couple of years' time when he decides, I think I can't continue as a player, Newcastle should say, right, get your coaching badge, and you've been into our coaching team.
Yeah, big thanks to Malarkey, I think it is, who says a big hello to Malcolm. The person who sent the message says that her dad remembers you from back in the day. So very many thanks for that. Yeah, John, Kieran Trippier, amazing. Amazing servant over the last couple of years.
He set the whole tone of Newcastle's rise from the dead, didn't he? He was a very early signing for us. He came to us having just won La Liga out in Madrid. And he set the tone because once he came, Bruno come very quickly after that. All of a sudden, we had quality players and other quality players were willing to come and join the fight. And he has been... There's a great thing where Eddie Howe says we have a lot of leaders. We have a leaders group of players, not just a team captain. And it's Lascelles, and it's Byrne, and it's Trippier, and it's Wilson, etc., etc. They steer this club towards where it's going, where we hope it will go. And without question, the most influential man in that group is Trippier, more than any of the others who are in that management group of players. And I think what's been startling for all of us recently is that, and it happens to the best, and this has proved it. There's been so many mistakes the poor lad's made in a short space of time, not spread over these 2 years here, that everybody say, well, that can't be Kieran. Kieran doesn't make mistakes like that. But everybody's human, everybody does. And, I think he, more than anybody, has shown examples, not just with what's happened on goal, but that he is running on empty. I think he has, because he's played every single game week after week after week after week until he was suspended and missed. Fulham, was it? You know, until that come along, he was just automatic. Time and time again. And you know, when we had a problem, he stepped in at left back so that Livermore could play right back when we initially had the problem. He has been an absolutely magnificent servant, and you know, I'm hoping that when we're next at home, because that's when we have 50,000 Geordies there, rather than at Luton, he is so well received when he comes out for that game and makes him realise how much he is loved at Newcastle, because he is. And by the way, he has earned that right. There's absolutely no question he's earned that right. And he's got a manager that absolutely adores him and will be giving him every support it's possible to give him from Monday to Friday when they're just training. So he will come out of it because he is very strong mentally. He is.
Crikey, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Oh, he'll come through. I've got no doubts on that. And for heaven's sake, everybody can make a mistake here and there. It's just frustrating that the one on Tuesday was so costly.
Yeah, Kenny W says Trippier 4 years at Spurs, 68 games, 3 years at Madrid, 64 games, 1 year at Newcastle, 60 games. Says it all. Which is a good pointer. Okay, we're going to play the ads. We're going to play the ads, and then we'll be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks again to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you'd like to order some, then give them a call on 01768 210 102. Go to the website, mrvickies.co.uk, or drop them an email, info@mrvickies.co.uk. A big thanks to United Group Travel. They're a family firm based in Morpeth with pickups throughout the Northeast. No strangers on our tours, just people you haven't met yet. They've got a presence on Facebook and a website, unitedgrouptravel.com. If you want to make a booking, give them a call on 01670 632 460 or mobiles 0791 666 4174 0795 71 41654. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. Let us look after you in your time of need. They're based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead, and you can contact them at their website, darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Email darren@darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk, or give them a call, 0191 478 2730. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And a big thanks to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. If you want to help the channel, hit the thumb up to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and share to your other social media. You can also pay a one-off fee of £25 to get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. Go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and click membership, or put your smartphone over this QR code. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make some donations virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. We're also a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast providers. Just search NUFC Matters. I'm also a part of the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. You can listen to that Monday to Friday, 7 till 9 at thetooneuk.com. We've also got an event coming up next year. It's in January the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. It's an evening with Nobby Solano. Tickets are available on voucher for £20. Don't forget, Supermac and Gibbo do every pre-match at Louis' Liquor Store. It's free entry, children welcome, and there is great food by Fed's Fried Chicken. They're usually on pre-match and sometimes post-match at Louis' Liquor Store. Don't forget, before the next home game, no pre-match talking. We will make an announcement in due course about the one in the new year. Okay, coming back to the questions, I'm just going to highlight this one for you, John. Geordie Toomba just says, have you got any information on Dan Ashworth? This has been a story that's run in the press for the last couple of weeks. Dan Ashworth came out and categorically said he was happy at Newcastle as Eddie Howe was. Is this just stories for clicks, John, or is there any substance to this? I mean, it's all very much up in the air. If Sir Jim Ratcliffe gets Manchester United, well, he might not get Manchester United. So I guess at the moment it's a bit of a non-story.
It is, but like a lot of non-stories, there's a little credence of truth in that.
Yeah.
The part that is right is that Ratcliffe thinks he's quality, and if Ratcliffe gets in and then gets his own way, which he will do, get his own way. I mean, he will probably make an approach for this guy. It doesn't mean that Dan Ashworth is going to say automatically, yes, I'm dying to go to Manchester United, and off he goes. But like any good operators, and Newcastle United are very clever behind the scenes, they have quietly looked at the situation and made a plan B, which is the guy at Bournemouth who worked very closely with Eddie when they were both at Bournemouth together. And if anything happened, if the worst come to the worst, and Newcastle aren't saying, right, we sacrificed Dan Ashworth now, and we're now going to go and do plan B. But you ought to have a plan B. Clubs have got to have a plan B. It's no good getting caught cold and something happening and then saying, oh, dear me, I didn't expect that. And what do we do now? So that they have got a quiet cover of what road they would go down. But it's very, very early days. And Dan's bound to say what he's saying, which is that he's very happy at Newcastle. And I've got no reason to think that that's untrue anyway. But he's going to say that because this is where he is and that's what his future is. And I hope it stays exactly the way it is now. But there is a plan B in case, so that we're not caught with our trousers down. And that is the most important part of it. But at this stage, it's so much pie in the sky, because until Ratcliffe moves in, then, the whole thing doesn't apply. But if he does get in, he'll make tentative inquiries to see if he can get him. If he feels he can get any encouragement, either from Dan or from Newcastle, he will pursue it. If he can't, he'll go off and do something else. Quite frankly, he's got enough problems down there to keep him well busy for an awful long time, because they have so much work to be done to get anywhere near what they were. I mean, they're light years away from Ferguson time. Absolutely light years away, and it's their problem. I want us to stay the way we are, but there is a plan B if it becomes necessary.
Okay, yeah. What I would also say, though, John, is looking at it from the perspective of Dan Ashworth, where is the real job satisfaction going to come from? And I think it's got to be Newcastle United, because financially, we are in the position over the next decade or so to become the biggest club in the world. Now, if you don't want to be in on that one, what's your real ambition? Just pocketing higher money? Well, I don't think that really. Certainly, this Newcastle United will be paying him an extremely good salary.
And you're right, Malcolm, in as much as things are already in place here, there's a calmness about the club, because they know the road they're going down. They know that the owners want to do A, B, C, and D. There's total confusion at Manchester United that you've got to put right. There's a bigger clear out needed on the playing side than there ever was at Newcastle, because there's troublemakers within the club, as well as people that aren't pulling their weight and aren't good enough. So there's an awful lot of work to be done. And you know what? I remember talking to Kevin Keegan when we got him in at the beginning of the Entertainers, and he said, this is the place to be. This is a sleeping giant. This is a place with no recent history. So anything you do, the first trophy you win at Newcastle United, you're on top of Gray's Monument. If you win 20 trophies over the next 20 years at Manchester United, you've just done what Ferguson did. It's so that you're going to get loaded more for what you do at Newcastle, who have never won anything since 1969, than if you win 12 trophies in 20 years of Manchester United. Say, well, Ferguson won 15. So, and there's an awful lot of work to be done there. And you could say, well, but they've got the financial clout in their big club. Newcastle have got the financial clout, so it can be done here.
We have, but it can't fully show itself just yet.
Not yet, but it's inevitable. As I said,
absolutely, it is inevitable.
As I said right at the beginning of the program, Malcolm, I am not worried. You know what's happened recently, which we're not pleased about, the way we went out of Europe and the way we went out of the League Cup, because we were very unlucky, or we blew it, or whatever. But I have no worries about the long-term future of Newcastle United. The only concerns I've got is the immediate future. By that, I mean the next half dozen games. I'm not long-term. We are only heading one way. That will happen regardless. The problem we've got with injuries and how quickly can we do things in the January transfer market, the problem we've got is, looking at Liverpool, Man City, Aston Villa, Sunderland in the cup. That's a problem we've got. Long term, we haven't got a problem.
Absolutely.
I tell you, just before we start looking ahead to the game of the weekend, just want to ask you about Lewis Hall, lads. Malcolm, start with you first. Lewis Hall on the bench for the Carabao Cup game hasn't featured a great deal. Played really well against Manchester United away, got a goal, but doesn't really seem to be fitting into Eddie Howe's plans at the moment. And he was eligible to play against his parent club on Tuesday night. Do you think it's just something that he's not doing in training? Do you think there's something that maybe he's just short of that Eddie needs to see before he starts putting him into the team? Because
quite possibly.
A lot of people saying Eddie Howe put Richie on ahead of Lewis Hall, which seem a lot of people saying it's a bit strange. But he works with him day to day, doesn't he, Mal?
Yes, and he's known Richie for many years, and he knows exactly what Richie will do. And personally, I think he was right to bring Richie on. But at the same time, I think what you've got to remember is that that Lewis Hall would have been under severe pressure at Stamford Bridge, and Richie was under no real pressure at all, and so. No, I was quite happy with the situation, and I think that Lewis Hall has got he's got a big test on his hands to work his way into the first team. I have no doubt that at some point we will see him in the first team as a regular. But he is a young lad, and the manager and the coaches, they'll be looking at him and saying, "Is he ready? Is he ready?" And that's the question that you're always asking yourself and your coaches about youngsters. Is he really ready?
But what concerns me, I think it's intriguing. It's absolutely fascinating, and nothing adds up. This is a kid that played 11, 12 games for Chelsea first team last season. We played twice against Newcastle and was star man for Chelsea against Newcastle.
Yes.
Newcastle decided, whoever that was, whether it was Eddie Howe, whether it's his relation who's in the scouting team, whether it was Dan Ashworth, whoever it was, Newcastle decided that this kid is so good, we'll take him on loan and commit to spend up to £35 million on an 18-year-old at the end of the season. Now, the only reason we didn't do it originally is because we want to spread the load because of financial fair play, and that then goes into the next financial year. But if Newcastle decided that this kid is worth 35 million, upwards of that, I think it's 28 initially in add-ons, how on earth, and we commit, by the way, that we must spend it. That is what we're led to believe. Now Eddie is muddying the waters by saying, well, there's a criteria to meet. Well, what's the criteria? And then that suggestion is the criteria is that we're committed to buy him if he plays X number of games this season. But Chelsea have come out and said that the deal doesn't depend on how many games Lewis plays. Now,
yeah, that's how I understand it as well.
correct. But you then look at the current situation, boys. You look at the current situation. We have been talking about an injury list of between 12 and 14 players, plus Tonali, who can't play, of course, for obvious reasons. So if we have that injury list and you have a kid who you have deemed worth £35 million and you don't bring him on, never mind start him. How often do we bring him on? We don't. We don't start them and we don't bring them on. And on the rare occasions, and they're very rare, I've spotted more Doros and Jasmine Dean than I've seen Lewis Hall recently. But so when we've started them, we've brought them off at half time, which is almost humiliating for our players. Malcolm, I'm certain, will agree. To be subbed as early as half time, if you haven't got an injury, is almost humiliation. We've done that to Mon once, and then we don't start them at all. We don't use them down there, and yet we're on the bones of our backside in terms of personnel. Now, I defy anybody. That doesn't add up. There is something behind the scenes with Lewis Hall, and it might be that Eddie wasn't the one that decided he was worth 35 million, and when he looks at him, he's decided now he isn't worth 35 million.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Oh, and he's sort of suggested, well, we've got to work on his defensive side of the game because he was a midfielder and he's now a fullback. But he played fullback for them all last season at Chelsea and got 11, 12 games in the first team and was star man against Newcastle. All of a sudden, we don't fancy him. There's something wrong somewhere. Believe you me, it does not add. Somebody said he's worth 36 million. And Eddie won't even put him on as a sub. Never mind against Chelsea, which, Steve, you were right, he was available in that case. But he hasn't put him on regularly. We have got nobody. But he's more likely to bring Kraft on. He's more likely to bring Richie on at 33 or 34. He's more likely to bring Kraft on, who's been a year and a half out. I bet he'd bring Dummett on before Hall at left back, if the case number. How on earth does a kid 18 that plays for England under 20s and we have committed up to 35 million on him and he can't even get on as a sub? There's something wrong between the guy that's decided how much this guy is worth and the manager who picks a team.
Yeah.
Interesting one, John.
Oh,
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And I think that's what you have just said, that to all those that have listened, they're going to look at Lewis Hall and the situation that he has with Newcastle United. They're going to look with slightly different eyes now.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, Malcolm, it would all make sense if we took him on loan with an option to buy him for 35 million.
Yes.
If we took him on loan, the manager...
But it's actually a done deal, John, isn't it?
That is what we are led to believe, and that's what Chelsea are floating to us, and that's what Newcastle have not corrected. That it is a done deal, and that it was only done out of cleverness, which sides do, and well done, Newcastle, so that the money goes into next season's pot instead of this season's pot in the financial fair play. Now, that's what we were told it was. And the lad, so thrilled to come because he's a Newcastle United supporter, etc., etc. And all of a sudden, and I mean, I'm fascinated by Eddie's press conferences because he's the only bloke I know that says 100 words and they don't mean a thing. Yeah, I mean, he's the most wonderful bloke I've ever known that's been able to say bugger all while saying a lot. I mean, he's got this. I mean, if he's got a lot of good things going for him, like man management, like tactic, like he's also got something unique going for him. He can talk all day and say out. And I mean, all he did with Lewis Hall when he was brought up by the press was confused the situation even further by saying, well, I don't know what's off. Well, if he doesn't know what's off, it's about time he found out. But he says, I don't know what's off. He says, but I think there's criteria to be met. And everybody's suddenly saying, is there a loophole where we don't have to take him? What's the criteria? Well, the only criteria must be that he's got to play, if he plays 16 games for Newcastle, then we've got to buy him. So then you don't allow him to play 16 games in case you don't want to buy him. Then Chelsea come out and say that's not the case. So what is the case? I'll tell you one thing that's an absolute certainty, and I know this because I'm in the press room. The press lads are waiting for the press conference tomorrow, and it'll not be, do you feel sorry for Trippier and have you given him a kiss? And do you feel that we can recover from losing at Chelsea? It's going to be, what the hair oil's going on with Lewis Hall? It's going to be asked that tomorrow because he didn't play him at Chelsea, having got into a situation where you could. For all it's his parent club still, we were in a situation which we weren't in the league, but we were in the League Cup, where we could have played him, and he never even got on. Now, he is going to be bombarded with questions about Lewis Hall at tomorrow's press conference. And you know the biggest certainty of the lot, lads? He will give his explanations, and none of them will be any the wiser.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's the one that'll run and run. Before the cup game, he was asked, Lewis Hall's on the bench, he's allowed to play. He goes, yeah, I can't wait to see him. Well, he saw him on the bench all night.
I've seen a dodo more often than I've seen Lewis Hall.
Okay, Newcastle take on Luton Town. Yes, this is another classic. Luton Town away. It's the first time we will have visited Kenilworth Road since February 1984. It's a good old-fashioned, non-televised 3:00 kickoff. All 1,100 away section tickets have been sold. The ground itself holds 10,265 supporters, so it's a very tight, old-fashioned ground as well. The first ever Premier League meeting with the Hatters makes Luton the 50th different side that we faced in the Premier League. Kenilworth Road is the 60th venue. Team news, well, we'll know a little bit more, or probably not, tomorrow from Eddie's press conference. News of availability of Anthony Gordon, Emil Kraft, Alexander Isak, Joe Linton, and Fabian Schär is what we're waiting for. Nick Pope, Elliot Anderson, Harvey Barnes, Matt Targett, Joe Willock, Javier Manculo, Jacob Murphy are all out, and Sandro Tonali, of course, until August. Well done, though. One bright spot from the other night. Sven Botman is expected to play. He played 45 minutes against Chelsea, and he looked just as good as new. One other little bit of homework, Jamal Lascelles and Sean Longstaff are both one caution away from a one-match Premier League ban. So in order to avoid that, they've got to avoid being booked against either Luton or Nottingham Forest. So fingers crossed for that.
Yeah.
Great news coming out of Luton today. Tom Lockyer is now out of hospital. He of course suffered a cardiac arrest during Saturday's Premier League game against Bournemouth, which was eventually abandoned, and rightly so.
Sure, and the second time this year that he suffered.
Yes, exactly. There are two former Newcastle players in Luton Town squad as well, Andros Townsend and former goalkeeper Tim Krul. At home, Luton so far this season, well, Rob Edwards has seen his side beat Crystal Palace and draw with both Wolves and Liverpool. West Ham, Burnley, Spurs, Arsenal and Manchester City all left with 3 points. Spurs are the only side to keep a clean sheet down there. The referee this weekend is Darren England. This is his first Newcastle fixture of the campaign. The last game he took charge involving Newcastle was the 2-0 home victory over Leicester City in the Carabao Cup last season. And on VAR, which is often switched off, is Peter Banks. So, Malcolm, another big game for Newcastle because it's the next one. This is a game they've got to be looking to get maximum points and bouncing straight back, hasn't it? These next two games need 6 points, really, because of what's round the corner in January.
Yeah, yes. Luton Town and Nottingham Forest, 6 points, absolute must. But Kenilworth Road is not a ground to suit Newcastle United. It's very tight, Newcastle like to stretch the play out somewhat. You're very limited there at Kenilworth Road, and they're hugely fit, and they really do knock the ball about very, very well indeed. And I was absolutely fascinated with how they contained Arsenal, Luton, at Kenilworth Road, and almost won the game. They were 3-2 up until late on, and Arsenal, they literally got a last-second winning goal, but Luton are playing some very, very good stuff indeed. They're going to be very difficult to beat, and Newcastle are really going to have to be on top form. We need to get more shots at goal, that's for sure. Other players have got to come in and do a bit more than they're doing around Wilson, and I just hope that tactically we cut the game into segments. And I don't see Newcastle doing this. That there's sort of plan A, and that's sort of from the first whistle to the very last whistle. But when you're playing away from home, the one thing that you say just before going out of your dressing room is, first 15 minutes, do not let anything happen awry. Do not allow shots on goals, keep them outside of the penalty area, and so on and so forth. And so frustrate the home side for the first 15 minutes. Last quarter of an hour, then depending on what the result, the score line is at the time, then you set your target. But if you're leading, shop up. And for heaven's sake, we just haven't been doing that. We could have had numerous more points if we have been prepared to, in the last 10 or 15 minutes, just shut the shop up, keep things tight, don't let the opposition have any space, and 5 or 6 points would have taken us right into the top 3, I think, John, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be intriguing, and I look at it. I mean, the warning, you can look at the table, and if you look at the table, you see the 3 sides that come up and stormed up from the championship, or the 3 sides that's going to go back down. Because Everton aren't going to do that, will Bournemouth, whatever. But it looks as though it could be, the 3 sides that come up, or the 3 sides going to go down. However, the warning is with Luton, and it's been touched upon already. I mean, they drew it at home. I'm talking about Luton at home. They drew at home 1-1 with Liverpool. They led against Arsenal and just got hit at the death. They led
and scored a lot of goals against them.
And led against Manchester City and just got hit at the death. So they've almost beaten or drawn with Arsenal and Man City, and they've drawn with Liverpool. So there is a threat that we've got to be aware of. And they utilise a tight ground well by bombing balls into the box. One touch down the wing, Andrew Townsend in the box. Let's fight for it. Let's see what we get off it. And Newcastle are very vulnerable away from home, which is why I'm taking Newcastle to win. Because it's about time we defied all the odds when we're not as bad as the doom makers would suggest. We've been incredibly unlucky. Yes, we've made mistakes. Of course, everybody makes mistakes, but a lot of them have been fatigue, and we're so limited, and will be again in terms of personnel. But we've got to get out there. We cannot feel sorry for ourselves. If we feel sorry for ourselves, we lose. We have got to say, hey, wait a minute, look at the table. We are up at the top end, they're down at the bottom end. There's a reason for that. They haven't just got unlucky and we are hopeless, but we're in the top 7. There's a reason for that huge gap, and we are going to exploit that. Now, yes, it's going to be a head count. We don't know, and we won't know until an hour before the game starts, what the Newcastle team's going to be, because Eddie's not going to tell us tomorrow, bless him. He won't be sitting up tonight saying, what can I say? He knows what to say. We'll find out tomorrow. We'll have to check on him. We'll have to check on that. And then the team comes out, and there's always a huge surprise in it somewhere, which is rather marvellous. But as Malcolm said, we have got to start getting shots. It might well be that Gordon doesn't make it, who's one of our wonderful guys. But it might also be that Isaac does and plays out wide to Wilson. So there's that possibility. But we have got to get more shots on goals. We've got to. And as I've said, and Steve has said, and Malcolm has said, there's no ifs or buts about this game. We have to win. We have to beat Luton, because we've then got to beat Forest. And we will beat Forest, by the way, because it's at St James's Park. And we do win at St James's Park all the time in the Premier League. We will beat Forest, but we've also got to beat Luton. It's no good. We went to Everton and lost. We went to Bournemouth and lost. We can't afford that sort of thing again. The main task of Newcastle United, as we see out 2023, is to beat Luton. Because Forest will then if we beat Luton, Forest will take care of itself. But we've got to beat Luton first. And I am taking us to beat Luton.
2-0 I'm going, John. What about you?
I'm going. I think there's a great chance of that. I'll let them have a goal because of the way they play 2-1. And by the way, I'll settle for 2-1 now. 2-0's wonderful, but we will win. We will win.
Luton will score. Of that, I'm fairly convinced. They are good going forward. But I'm going to take Newcastle in this. And I've got a feeling that there's going to be a few goals. So I think it could be a 3-2 victory to Newcastle United.
That would be good fun. That would be good fun. By the way, all that matters is if 3 we've took a victory. I mean, actually, that doesn't matter. All that matters is Newcastle do it for us on our behalf. But then,
a 3-2 win and spend Botman to sit on the ball, John.
Hey, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I would definitely, as long as he doesn't sit on the ball for one of their goals. Exactly. Yes, I would have a little and get the fag out and have a gin. I think that sounds good to me.
Well, you've got a week off, guys, next week. I just want to say thanks for everything this year. We will be welcoming you back after Christmas, though. And I'm sure you'd love to wish our viewers a happy Christmas, lads.
Absolutely, yes. Do have a wonderful Christmas. And
absolutely, thoroughly deserved. Enjoy it. It's been a roller coaster year, but it's had a lot more ups and downs, and a lot more ups compared with the 15 years that went before we got into this happy stage of events. Have a lovely, lovely time. And as I've always said, keep the faith.
And the best present that we could get are 3 points against Luton and 3 points at home against Nottingham Forest.
No question. If we do that, I'll be raising a glass of gin to everyone. And if we lose and I'm decimated, I'll be drowning in a glass of gin.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'll only be raising a glass of water to you, John.
Okay, lads. Have a good one. Take care, lads.
And you, Steve.
Bye, mate. Bye.